All right. So now we have posted our creature in our landscape, our creaturescape. We did everything we could to match the lighting and the angle of the creature's anatomy so it fit that environment. That is only one part of our proving ground rubric. It's number 2. Now we are ready to be able to do the first requirement. So did we accurately identify the resolution, pixels per inch, and physical format, aka print size, while identifying which of the 2 main types of digital art resolution your creaturescape is sized for? So there's a lot to that. How do we do it? First of all, we go back to Photoshop and we have to look at what the dimensions are. So Photoshop tells us this in the lower left-hand corner. But this is not helpful to us. It's the data, but it's not the data in the usable way that we need it to be. So what does this show us? This shows us that my image is 17.14 inches by 11.591 inches at 350 pixels per inch. The problem is 350 pixels per inch is not a standard minimum resolution type. There's only 2 standard resolution types for digital imaging I need you to know in this class. One is for screen and one is for printing. Printing is 300 pixels per inch. Screen is 72 pixels per inch. Those will be on the midterm. We'll talk about them a lot. You just need to know them, right? And they are standards because that is the minimum. They are standard resolution minimums. So if you want to print an image, your pixels per inch should not be less than 300 pixels per inch at the size you want to print it. So how can I see if this is good enough for print quality or for screen? I go to image size. This is what gives us control of our pixels. And in this case, I am not going to be resampling anything. I'm just trying to make sense of the pixels I have. I've done a lot to make these pixels as good as they can be. I do not want to screw them up at this stage. And the way you screw them up is to have resample checked. Resample checked means it will take the pixels you have and it will either make more pixels or it will take them away. And I don't want either of those things to happen. What I want to do is understand what these pixels are good for. So, in image size, if I uncheck resample, I can see that same information. 17 inches by 11.5 inches at 350 pixels per inch. But I need it to be 300 pixels per inch, because that's what standard print resolution is. So what would the dimensions be at 300 pixels per inch? So what do? I type in 300. And when I do that, because resample is unchecked, the pixels haven't changed. It's still 5,999 pixels wide. But the dimensions change. It's no longer 17 inches. It's closer to 20 inches. Right? So now I'm going to write this down. And I'm going to physically write it down on a piece of paper. And I'm just going to round up to 20 inches wide by 13.5 inches tall at 300 pixels per inch. And the reason I wrote that down is because now I ask myself, I can also do a screen grab of it, Command-Shift-4. I ask myself, is that larger than 8 by 10? It's an easy question to answer, but you have to ask yourself this question. Is this dimension larger than 8 by 10 at 300 without having to invent new pixels? For me, the answer is yes, but it might not be for you, and that's fine. So this is what I do now. I click on Edit, and I'm going to post underneath. I know they're in a weird order, but it's just because how they're required by the badge credentialer. I'm going to do rubric requirement number 1. And you don't need to label it, you just need to have it. So now, exactly what I wrote down. I'm going to say 20 inches, and like quotations is the notation for inches, by 13.5 inches at 300 pixels per inch. Now I have to ask myself, is this at least 8 inches by 10 inches? You don't need to type this, but it was helpful to my other class. Is this at least 8 by 10 inches at 300 pixels per inch? And when you ask that, if yes, then label like this. Print resolution. It's good enough for printing. For what's called print resolution, the standard minimum print resolution. So what's the actual requirement? Saying that it's print resolution and saying what its dimensions are and what its pixels per inch are. That meets requirement number 1. Now what if, so this is a what if now, it wasn't big enough. It wasn't 8 by 10 when I put in 300 with resample unchecked. So I'm going to show that by having it be like 6.7. And I'll undo all of this. But I'm resampling, so now it's going to shrink my image. It's going to reduce my pixels by more than half. Takes away all the quality from them. Right. Okay, but now, and it still looks good on a screen. So now if I go to image size, and I unclick resample, and I type in 300, let's say it was 350 before, by those, so I type in 300, the pixels won't change, but the dimensions will change. Now I write this down. It's 6.7 inches by 4.5 inches at 300. Is that larger than 8 by 10? The answer is no, so I have to do another step. I have to type in the other standard resolution type, which is screen. So at 72 pixels per inch, I write this down. It's going to be basically 28 inches by 19 inches at 72 pixels per inch. And because that's smaller than 8 by 10 at 300, I say that's good enough for screen resolution. So you need to give the dimensions in inches. You need to give the resolution in pixels per inch. It needs to be either 300 or 72. And then you need to label it as either good enough for screen or good enough for print. It's easy to do once you understand it. Okay, now I'm going to undo all of that because I just took away a lot of quality. All right, so that's that second requirement. Save. Now that will get me 1 out of 1.5 points. Because I'll get points for this one, because I named the digital resolution type accurately, and I listed my physical format, which is the inches dimension, and the pixels per inch. Okay, the third rubric requirement is, did I explain how my creature is intended to interact with its environment, accounting for atmospheric and practical concerns? For example, how does your creature breathe, shelter, and eat in this environment? So I've spent quite a bit of time now making this creature fit in the environment, kind of thinking about what time of day it is, what the temperature is, whether it's a completely fanciful world where physics exist in a different way, or whether it's in a kind of believable environment. So rubric requirement number 3 is you actually need to write a paragraph. There's not a word count requirement. You just need to address kind of the major aspects of how your creature would live and survive in this environment. So I like to give my creature a name at this point, because it just helps it, stick in the mind. So I'm going to call this my toucan monkey. And maybe I italicize that. I'm not going to file for a trademark on it quite yet. But. So the toucan monkey has adapted a distinctively large bill made for breaking open the water-soaked hulls of ships in dry dock. And I don't mind if you misspell things or if your sentence structure is strange, as long as I can understand your thinking. Now, what is this requirement about? I need to say a little bit more, but it's called framing novel problems in familiar terms. So this is a new problem you've just been given. How do you explain? How do you BS, basically? It's a big part of digital art and marketing, right? How do you sell your audience that this creature belongs in this environment, no matter how unrelated they are? So we're going to find ways to account for those issues, right? We want it to sound like it's familiar. So we all need to eat. And we've seen birds with large noses before. And it's not a woodpecker. So what is that big beak for? That's a natural thing to start with. It has abnormally large eyes for seeing clearly through the darkened morning mists. It uses its powerful legs, forearms, and tail to defend against buzzards and would-be predators. But is slow moving due to the weight of its head. For limited protection against airborne threats, it has a somewhat translucent, what do we want to call that thing on its head? Frill / mohawk that is brightly colored to target attacks, and yet has no nerve endings, and like a lizard's tail, can quickly regrow once detached. So I've talked about how it defends itself, what it eats. Oh, actually, I haven't said what it eats. I've said it breaks into the water-soaked hulls of ships in dry dock to feast on the ample supply of rats and other vermin. Such plentiful food has led the species to grow quite larger than would be expected. I'm not going to say what its exact sizes are. It has abnormally large eyes. I spelled colored completely wrong. All right, I think that's pretty good. You're more than welcome to use spell check as I need to. But you're just trying to think through it. And I might say, I've already talked about it being early morning. You know, it keeps warm in the frigid temperatures with its combination of fur, scales, and feathers.